Joining us right now, a guy that is no stranger to the show, and great to meet him a few months back at the MLS Cup final, finally from ESPN, Jeff Carlisle. Jeff, welcome, my friend.
Anthony, how are you, man?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for making time again out of your busy schedule. Jeff, let's get right to it. A historic day, a happy day, a day that'll go down in all three countries as a day that a marriage was made for this World Cup bid in 2026. I'm of mixed emotions, Jeff. I'm happy, I'm frustrated, and I'm upset. All three. And I'll give you mine quickly. You tell me your take. I'm a little bit, frustrated at only 10 games for Canada, 10 for Mexico. I think 15 and 15 would have been sufficient. And if this is a marriage of all three nations, then I believe all three nations should play a part in the semifinals and finals. I don't understand why from quarterfinals on we're giving the USA everything, where Mexico City, for me, Jeff, and Toronto easily should have been in the semifinals. Give the final to the US of A. I'm okay with that. Let's start with that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I was surprised, to be frank. I mean, obviously I was listening in on the presentation like so many people in all three countries, and when I heard the breakdown, 60 games for the U.S. and then 10 and 10, it blew me away, quite frankly. I mean, I thought both Canada and Mexico, would have, a greater part to play in this, but I think there are some realities that both countries ran up against, and that is, the U.S. could have, opted to host this alone and probably still would have won. And then you add into that, other elements. The Mexico national team and the Federation, by extension, makes an awful lot of money on friendlies in the United States, which the USSF has to approve. So, I think the U.S. had Mexico over a barrel a little bit on that. And, in terms of Canada, I think, Canada was not exactly operating from a position of strength, for the reason I mentioned earlier, just that the U.S. could have hosted this alone. So I am surprised. I think the U.S. probably played a little bit of hardball here. We'll see, what transpires, as we get further in the process. I mean, this is a proposal, keep in mind, and FIFA has to approve it. So, I mean, if they have some suggestions, then, I think the U.S. and Canada and Mexico are going to be obliged to go along. But, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, my initial reaction was one of surprise for sure, just in terms of the balance of the game.
So, Jeff, I've heard you and some real experienced journalists down south, and I love my brothers and sisters down south in the US of A, keep saying they could have bid on their own. So then why didn't they? To me, this bothers me. I got to tell you, Jeff, because I got to be honest, if it wasn't Canada along here basically putting the arm around the shoulder of Sunil Gulati and the Mexicans as well coming, presenting to FIFA, I don't think the USA gets it. To be very honest and blunt about it, with the world climate, the temperature all over the world today, and the spotlight on the USA for many reasons, I don't think the USA would have got it. But now with Canada and Mexico, it's like, you know what? Yeah, let's give it to them. And that's what bothers a lot of people up here and in Mexico, I believe, Jeff.
Well, I mean, I think the reality is, who else is going to step up, though, and bid for this outside of CONCACAF? Right now you've got Morocco making some noises about, bidding. Colombia is another one. And quite frankly, I don't think either of those two countries, have the infrastructure and the money-making potential that a World Cup in North America has. So for that reason, that's why I think that the CONCACAF bid, some people are calling it the NAFTA bid, is a huge favorite going forward. And I think it's a case of Sunil Gulati, maximizing his odds. Was it a slam dunk if the U.S. had bid by itself? No. As everyone knows, there's a lot of anti-American sentiment around the world. Certainly some of the proposals coming from the Trump White House are being met with a lot of concern and in some cases hostility. So I think it's a case of Sunil Gulati, just again maximizing his odds. Maybe he had a 60% chance of getting it, but he wanted 100. I think he felt really burned by the last process. Now, granted, things are operating a little bit differently this time, but and again, this is a proposal. I mean, I want to repeat that. I mean, things can change. We'll see how, if FIFA decides to go down this road with these three countries, we'll see what changes they start asking.
I believe in my heart of hearts it's a slam dunk. I believe they will win it. They have everything in place. Logistics-wise, it favors the USA over Canada or Mexico. To me, one of the concerns is this. As a Canadian, and all the feedback I've gotten today and the messages and the phone calls, the 10 games are okay for Canada. 15 would have been nice. Mexico should be pretty ticked off because I think they should have gotten at least 15. But they don't want to see, Jeff, when the groupings are all set up, and the Mexicans as well, that let's say Toronto gets the grouping of 3 out of the 4 worst countries that just barely got in there, and that the creme de la creme all is down south. That to me, because look, the Azteca Stadium is another one, Jeff, that I believe that has to be spotlighted. It's a world historic site.
It is. And there are other good stadiums in Mexico as well. I mean, Monterrey's got a terrific stadium. Guadalajara has got a new stadium, and that's very up to date and modern. So, and Sunil Gulati said the more venues, the better. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to be a case of Toronto and that's it. I think concerns about which teams might end up in which countries. I think that's a little premature at the moment. Again, there's going to be some give and take. There's going to be some back and forth. But I mean, you heard Tecchio Di Maria say today, he took 10 games because that's what was on the table. And so, I think that speaks a little bit to the position of strength that the U.S. was operating from. And again, we'll see how it goes. I mean, obviously, sponsors have to be satisfied. There are a lot of moving parts to this. So, but again, 10 games. Like many people out there, I was surprised. I thought it would have been more for both.
Jeff, just before we let you go, I was discussing this with someone today, and I think it's time that, once the bid is official, given to these 3 nations, I think the USA has to start thinking about maybe not going to the Rose Bowl, maybe not going to New York and playing the final there. I really believe they should go to Jerry's Dome, and that's in Dallas, and lay down some grass there. It's a state-of-the-art. It still, in my mind, will be a state-of-the-art in 8-9 years from now. I think they should start thinking about playing a final or a semifinal, if that's what it comes down to, in Dallas. Your thoughts, Jeff?
That's a real possibility. I mean, obviously that stadium is second to none, and anyone who I've been to the Rose Bowl. Certainly it's a very historic venue. I think in terms of LA, though, the venue that everyone really needs to be thinking about is the new football stadium that's going to go up. Where eventually I think the Chargers are going to play, and then in the Rams as well. So I mean, I think that is the venue in terms of Los Angeles that is really going to have a leg up on the competition. I mean, we'll see. Once it's all built and completed, how much of an advantage it has over Dallas' stadium. But I imagine that Stan Kroenke is not going to spare any expense on this. I mean, I think he sees the money-making potential, and I think it's going to have all the bells and whistles that you would expect. So rather than Pasadena, I think that new stadium in LA is the one to look out for.
Jeff, great of you to take time to join us. I'm sure you're going to write a big piece on this either tonight, you've done it, or tomorrow. Where can our viewers, our listeners, have a look at that, and when will it be up?
Well, I've got a piece already up today. It's kind of a Q&A. So I think that's the last piece that I'm on the hook for. But they can find it on ESPNFC.com. And if they don't see it, on one of the first few rows, they can just type in my name, Jeff Carlisle, in the search bar, and it'll come up.
You're a class act. You're a wonderful guy to have on. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much again for making time, Jeff.
Hey, anytime, Anthony.